Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's Tips and Tricks webinar. Today's topic is on Cloud WAF security. Please use the Q&A chat. If you have any questions during the webinar, we'll make sure we get to those at the end of the webinar. Our presenter today is our Cloud Security Architect, Brian Smith. Brian, what do you have for us today?
Thanks, Rob. Welcome, everyone. So today we're going to go over the CloudGuard WAF. A little bit about me, Brian Smith. I've been here at Check Point a little over 2.5 years, from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, which is about an hour and 20 minutes outside of Philly in New York City, so pretty good location. As you can see, I'm a father of 5 girls. Keeps me quite busy. I love sports. Graduated from Penn State in 2005. Worked in healthcare IT, large 2 billion plus organization for about 14 years. I've been working with Checkpoint products for a long time, and cloud service providers. You can see some of my credentials at the bottom there. Today's agenda, so we're going to talk about how here at Checkpoint we're adding prevention to CNAPP, and we'll talk about what that acronym is and how it fits in with our web application firewall technology and what makes us unique. Some of the new capabilities around API discovery and WAF as a service. And then we'll talk a little bit about things we run into with our customers, some tips and tricks with ciphers and troubleshooting and exceptions. And then ultimately at the end, in the spirit of community, because I know this will be up on Checkmates, we'll talk about the WAF community edition as well briefly. So a little bit about Checkpoint's cloud business. Over the last year, we are securing over 3,700 customers worldwide, which encompasses about 800 million plus assets that we're protecting every day. It is a large responsibility that we take very seriously, and we've been in the business for 30 years, as most of you probably know. So very large cloud security business. We've been recognized by various top analysts in our cloud offerings, anything from CNAPP, CSPM, like posture management, or CWPP, workload protection, and of course, web application and API protection. And there's some new accolades from GigaOM that we've recently got around some of the API discovery pieces that we'll talk about. And then obviously, the cloud network security, the bread and butter of Checkpoint. So what is CNAPP plus prevention, right? So, ultimately, the CSPM market, the CNAPP market's been around for some time now, but, Checkpoint prides ourselves on prevention first, right? So being able to stop attacks before they, impact your business, preventing them and making, from an operational perspective, as streamlined as possible, right? And where the WAF fits into that, as you can see here, right, when you take our web application firewall, our cloud native application protection platform, CNAPP, and our network, our cloud firewalls and threat preventions, and you combine those together, right, you really get the best of breed, right? You get that, you're able to give the power back to you guys, right? Simplify your operational overhead and really, streamline your security and layer it, right, to get that prevention first. So what we're here today for, right? CloudGuard WAF, right? So it's an AI-based web application and API prevention technology. There are a variety of features and services that it can offer and that it can do, right? So if you're familiar with, the Checkpoint Blade architecture, think of it like that, right? It's an easy kind of one-to-one kind of correlation where you can, most of these are just turned on, but you can turn them on and off and kind of tweak them as needed. But, obviously what you need from a WAF, right? You need to be able to stop OWASP top 10 attacks, right? So that cloud native WAF functionality, stopping the OWASP top 10, getting API security, right? Getting that visibility, protecting your APIs, wherever they are, bot prevention, being able to stop bots, rate limiting, and file security, right? So a little bit about the file security piece. If you're familiar, with some of our antivirus blades or threat extraction, threat emulation, those types of things, we can take files that are coming in, scrub them through our Checkpoint Threat Cloud, which is a large AI machine learning security repository, right? That has many different ways of helping customers, prevent those zero-day attacks and securing their environments. So, the same thing can be applied here from a WAF perspective, right? So as those files are coming in inbound through your front-end APIs or through your web apps, you can scan those. And then ultimately, as you can see here, all of this is powered by our contextual AI process, where we hold a few patents in this space, which makes our offering unique. So let's talk a little bit about that, right? I think there's really two things or two stages to understand, right, from a contextual AI analysis point of view, right? So that AI is supervised, right? So what that means today, right, is the large language model and the learning of our engine, we pre-train it, right? So that, out of the box, it has, some understanding of, what to look for and what to do. Obviously, that can be tuned and improved based on your web application, right? There's a whole learning period. There's a whole process that when you onboard your web applications or your APIs, that our system will learn and adapt and, really evolve. But ultimately, right, being able to distribute these nano agents within the cloud environment, right, to effectively intercept all the HTTP interactions, analyzing them in real time, right? We use two steps to ensure we are protected against both known and unknown risk, right? So in stage one, the machine learning based enforcement engine looks for the attack indicators within the HTTP request, right? The evaluation is based on the supervised model that identifies indicators and associates them with specific statistical likelihood or a score of being part of an attack, right? And we have actually a couple great blog posts and public assets out there that discuss this in great detail on how this actually functions. But then, those scores are assigned not only for each indicator by itself, but also for pairs of indicators. In addition, the indicators are associated with certain attack families in which they typically occur. So the scoring process allows CloudGuard to take an accurate initial decision about the attack likelihood of the HTTP request, right? And so that first stage generally filters and deals with 97% of the traffic, right? So it doesn't even get to this second stage that we're gonna talk about here. So as it says, right, old school's WAF stop here, right? So if, WAF's been around a long time, right? So there are legacy WAFs in the market, and then there are the modern cloud native WAFs that we have that we offer here today, right? And we'll kind of go through what really sets us apart. This second stage is critical, right? This is what allowed us to stop a lot of the 0 days over the last few years for our customers. This advanced analysis engine, right? This is where the interesting stuff happens, right? Suspicious requests are analyzed in this contextual machine learning evaluation engine to gain further confidence that any HTTP request, which was indicated as potentially malicious, is indeed an attack, right? So we are correlating additional parameters such as application structure, user crowd behavior, user content and transactions, and more, right? So this is just some of those items that are being analyzed, right? So that ultimately these results, it makes for extremely precise detection, which effectively flagging any irregular or harmful request and blocking it from entry. And just kind of a graphic, right? So as you see here, the cloud front door, that service door, right? The front entry point for your mobile applications, your users, all of the things coming into those APIs or those web apps that you have. And you can see the two stages here. So the nano agent being deployed, right? In this case, this HTTP request is coming into this logon service, which then is hitting a reverse proxy. And then that reverse proxy is leveraging the CloudGuard WAF nano agent and the two-stage enforcement, right? So the risk indicator engine being the first stage, where you have your IP user agents, your client-side behaviors, your fingerprints, session IDs, all of the stuff that you normally or you're familiar with from an HTTP payload perspective. And then if that request then needs further analysis, hitting stage 2, where you go through the user behavior, crowd behavior, and so on. And then, what happens is, right, the advanced analysis engine, if it gets there and needs to make, a decision around allow block, right, so it's going to then inform the upstream ingress or egress controller, in this case, this Nginx component, to, deny or allow that particular traffic. And what makes this so powerful, right, and makes it the only preemptive WAF solution in the market, is that these are just some examples, right? Log for shell, spring for shell, text for shell, and move it being the most recent, where our technology, those patents we hold, the two-stage enforcement process, we were able to provide our customers with this preemptive prevention, right? Which is critical in today's world, because speed is everything. And so as you can see, if you're running some of the cloud native WAFs, which are great, right? There's some checkboxes, it makes it easy. But it took time, 5 weeks, 31 weeks, right? It takes time for them to update their signatures and then be able to stop these types of attacks. Anyone running CloudGuard WAF would have been, secure from the beginning. The good news is you don't have to take our word for it, right? There are many customers that we have, just some examples, that are using our technology and seeing the benefits. And then also, right, the Clarity Team 82 did a great article around a WAF bypass, a generic WAF bypass. The only WAF on the market, the only WAF to exist that wasn't susceptible to that bypass was CloudGuard WAF, right? That's a great write-up. If you haven't read it, absolutely encourage you to read it, just to show you the power of that contextual AI analysis process. Recently, this past year, right, in the GigOhm report for most innovative, we're been named as a leader. And then most precise, right? And we'll talk a little bit about the importance of precision when it comes to web application firewalls, right? Because that ultimately drives out operational cost, operational overhead, and really focusing on efficiency and making sure the right things are being stopped. So out on GitHub, there's actually a WAF comparison project where this is all publicly available, so there's nothing, it's all transparent. But the 9 leading WAF solutions were tested, right? So with that, almost 1 million legitimate HTTPS requests were used, and about 74,000 malicious payloads, which could be compromised of SQL injections, cross-site scripting, and so on, as you can see here, right? Log for shell, shell shock, a variety of different malicious payloads used in that, and really trying to find the balance, right, between true and false positives, with one being security quality, which is your true positives, plus your detection quality, which is your false positives, gives you that balanced accuracy, right? And I think a lot of the conversation I have with customers, this comes up often, right? That kind of the efficacy, the rate of which the solution is able to stop actual bad traffic and allow legitimate traffic, right, to reduce that overhead. And what you can see here from a true positive or security quality perspective, right, we're about 9% better than the other vendors. From a false positive or detection quality perspective, you see about 7% here, and then balanced accuracy, right? Overall, that total score, way far and above the other vendors out there, from a balanced accuracy perspective. And again, this WAF comparison project is available on GitHub. All of that data is available externally. You can look at it and check it out if you're interested. Now, what's new, right? So CloudGuard WAF has evolved a lot over the 2.5 years that I've been here. It was previously named AppSec. So if you've heard that term, WAF is the new name. But anywhere from the WAF plugins, right? All of the different community things that we're doing has really driven the plugin initiatives, which has been great. WAF as a service, which is also was introduced this past quarter and should be GA here soon. We have a lot of customers using it now, but being able to leverage this WAF technology without having to deploy anything, right? You change some DNS entries and away you go. And now you've got the best WAF technology in the market. And then finally, API security, right? API discovery. And this is new. This is very exciting because a lot of times folks don't know what APIs they have, and what the schema is, and how they're being used, and so forth. And so being able to secure that, having the visibility, is extremely important. So we're very excited to announce that we have the API discovery feature, and then to kind of point out that I think I heard 80% of traffic nowadays is all API based, right? Which doesn't seem unreasonable when you think of all of the things we do on our mobile devices today, and all of that traffic between applications, right? All of that is API based. Then from an agent deployment perspective, right? So, I think the thing to take away here is flexibility, right? So the CloudGuard WAF can be deployed in a variety of public, private clouds. It can be deployed as close to the application that you need. And so you'll see here, right, we have AWS gateways, we have Azure gateways, VMware. You can do the add-on components, right? So if you're already running an Nginx reverse proxy or something like that, you can add the Nano agent right into that Linux VM. If you're, leveraging, the Kubernetes services, right? So EKS, AKS, or OpenShift, any of those things, from an ingress perspective, you can also layer in CloudGuard WAF. And then finally, you can run it as a container in Docker. And there's some benefits to that, where we would love to have the conversation if you're at the point where you're looking to do something like this and you're not sure exactly where to put it and what to do, absolutely reach out. We're here to help with those conversations. Because sometimes running as a container, you can have, the benefit of the standard libraries, the, full end-to-end support, where we Checkpoint controls both the reverse proxy and the WAF, right? So it's a good conversation to have. And then, under the hood, we're using Nginx as well, right? And then for the collabs, right, you have Kong, Envoy, and so on. And then the last thing to mention here, right, if you have your CI/CD pipeline deployment processes, being able to integrate WAF into that is very easy, makes it very scalable and easy to consume. So moving to WAF as a service, right? So this is extremely exciting. For this, we can offer DDoS protection up front, right? Where if it's anything other than HTTP or HTTPS, right, down the stack, right? So only the layer 7 HTTP calls and HTTPS calls are going to be allowed to get through to the cloud, to the WAF component, to the backend application, right? Where the DDoS piece is going to drop everything else, which obviously is extremely important in today's world. But just know, that piece does exist for WAF as a service. And then ultimately, it's really a two-step process. And we'll kind of walk through here. But you create the web application or the API in our Infinity portal where you manage CloudGuard WAF. And then from there, you just change a CNAME record to point to the Checkpoint cloud. And then you have the security that you may or may not have today. And so you'll see here, right, Bitwarden being just the example in this case, the application that we're using to kind of illustrate the process, right? And so he's just going through here, and we'll get to the point where inside of the Infinity portal, where you go in, you create a new asset, a web application asset, you give it a name, right? In this case, being the Bitwarden, front end. You then give it, the URL that users are going to access, right? So this would be the URL of the application. And then the backend, IP address, reverse proxy, it could be a name there as well. And here, this is where you'll set, generally, when you first onboard and you go through this, we'll actually go through a learn and a detect process. And depending on the volume of traffic that application is seeing, will indicate or kind of determine how long we want to kind of be in that state. But in this case, right, we're going to go right into prevent just to show you how it functions. But just be aware, right, when you deploy this in your environment, you'll start at learn and detect. And then here you'll see all of the different methods that we kind of just touched on with VMs, Kubernetes, Docker, Linux. In this case, being the SaaS service. Down in the bottom here, you'll see choose region. We're available in any, pretty much every region, right? So if it's not in that list today, we can get it in that list within, I think, 2 days is what I've been told. And so obviously we're leveraging the power of the cloud as well, which makes this very scalable, very secure, and running on, tried and true cloud native technologies. And then you have the certificate piece. You have the the X4 headers, and then the summary. And then you click done here, and then you've created your first web app within the solution. And then the step one, right? The easy part here is you got to validate that you own the domain, right? So you take the CNAME, you go into your DNS, and you update that you are in fact the owner of that domain. And then from there, right, you take the value, you put it in. We're doing it out in Route 53 in this example just to show you, but you could do this in wherever your public DNS is. It's the same process. And then from there, what you'll do in step 2 is you'll direct the WAF service to the DNS record down below, right? So you'll go into your public DNS and you'll update your application a record. And you'll add a CNAME to say, hey, send the traffic to Checkpoint's cloud, right? So that's step 2, and that's what is going to happen in here. And then from there, once that occurs, right, we'll kind of fast forward here a little bit. What you'll see is he's locking down. So on the right-hand side, you'll see 3 addresses, right? So that's the source of the traffic, basically saying only allow traffic from these 3 addresses, right? Because you know that's the CloudGuard WAF service, which he's updating here, and then going to show you just how it operates, right? So this is just logging back into the Bitwarden application, and then he's going to do something that is not allowed, right? He's going to add a couple extensions here, trying to get to the password section, and it gets blocked, right? So ultimately just testing to make sure that the WAF is actually securing that traffic. And then you can see under events, right? So if you're familiar with Smart Console and our logs, obviously we have the premium logs in this space, very similar, right? All of these are the different cards that contain the severity, the confidence, the agent information, and so on. And this information is actually, this card information then can get used as we move along here to create exceptions and do other things within the system. But just to point out, right, where you can actually see the information. Yep. So, and then, so what do you get, right? So you have 0 agent deployment, right? You have automatic certificate renewal. So the certificates on the SaaS service are all automatic, and then you get DDoS protection. So if you're interested in that, definitely reach out and let us know. Moving on to API security, right? So one of the challenges is visibility, right? So a lot of times we've run into customers, they don't know the APIs that they have. They know the API exists, but they don't have a schema. They don't really, they're not sure how to manage it. Of course, APIs are handling a lot of sensitive data. So getting that visibility, being able to discover those APIs, enrich, get good context enrichment, and then, fine tuning suggestions is very important. And what you'll see here, right, as you onboard an API into the solution, we can actually build out this schema for you, right? So if you're familiar with Swagger files or the Open API standards, right, if you don't have that today in your environment, this will create that for you. And then we'll use that information in different parts of the solution which makes it, very powerful, right? So you can see just an example schema here, and then we'll move to the next piece, right? So this is just how to onboard, right? So the same thing, you go to Web API, we create a new API inside of the CloudGuard WAF. And then you want to make sure that all your APIs are routed through the CloudGuard WAF agents, right? So that they can start to learn your APIs. And that's just what's happening here. So you'll see, right, there's an API discovery practice, very similar to the other one. Just wanted to show both of them. So you got a feel for the setup process and how it works and how easy and straightforward it is. But then you have your API card here. And then in here, this is all the different layers. But what he's going to do now is just kind of go in, generate some traffic, right? Click around, make some changes, basically use the API in the system. That's all that's happening here in this part of the demonstration. And then from there, we'll pop back over to the CloudGuard WAF, and you'll see at the top that the schema has been updated for this particular asset, right? So that it's been detected. And you can click on it, and it's going to take you directly into the Learn section of this particular API, which you'll see here under API Discovery, a bunch of statistics, the current learning level. We're not going to talk much about that today, but just be aware in our documentation, there's a great write-up around what that is and how that works. And then you can see the open schema down below, all the different methods, right? The puts, the gets, the posts, the deletes, how many requests, if there was sensitive data, and then just opening up the schema itself here. So just to show you kind of how that actually functions. And then ultimately, from a monitoring perspective, right? So, being able to see this information on scale. So, this is just one API, but I can imagine you have 10 or 100, right? Having it all in one place, seeing if there's any blocked API requests, seeing the most used APIs, and all of the different information in regards to your securing your APIs. So again, right, you can't secure what you can't see. So getting that visibility and that schema validation is super important. And then coming back into the WAF, going into the threat prevention tab, right? So we talked a little bit about the features in the beginning, but just think of this, if you're familiar with the concept of software blades in the checkpoint world, this is where you can kind of make that correlation where these are the different layers that you can enable, disable. As you can see here, the mode, right? For example, schema validation mode is currently disabled. And then you can also see, right, API attacks, all the different types of stuff that we're just stopping. The level of confidence can be selected and so on. But down below, you'll see the discovery, right? So here are all the different revisions, as probably is happening in your environment today, if depending on what you have, the APIs are being updated frequently, and you may or may not know about it, right? So that's part of the challenge, right? Is keeping up to date, right? And so this is going to do that. It's going to show you those changes, right? As the API is evolving, it's going to detect those changes. And what's nice, or what is powerful about it, is you can then take that information, right? And actually put it into the threat prevention schema validation component, right? So you can come in here, you can say, all right, let me select the latest or this particular revision of the API compared to the full schema or the API endpoint, and then you can actually lock it down, right? You can say, all right, only allow these particular methods, right? And so you can change that. You can then enforce that into the WAF, and then from there, if any changes are made outside of that, or if anybody tries to do something that's not allowed within the API, it's automatically going to get blocked, which you'll see here. So at the top, you see, trying to make an API called new API call, right, into the Bitwarden application. And when he does that, it gets stopped, right? So this is just a very basic example, just to show you, the power of the discovery and the WAF component around it. So, we're very excited that we were recognized in 2024 already for this functionality by GigaOM. So This will continue to evolve, but you can see, there's a lot of movement and momentum here for this piece. And then finally, some of the tips and tricks, right? So some of the things I've run into with customers over the last couple months and last year, right? Let's say, for example, you want to enable specific ciphers, right? So just like we created a web app or an API, what you do is you go into that particular web application that you have in the WAF. From there, you go and click on the advanced button in the middle, which then takes you down to additional settings. And then step 3, so again, 1, 2, 3. Now you can select very specifically in yellow here and specify that you don't want any medium or low strength ciphers, right? So this is just an example. In this particular example, what you see on the right-hand side, there's the list of ciphers that then will be allowed. But the point of this is to show you, one, the flexibility, right, the power of it, and just how to accomplish something very specific. And then from a command line perspective, when you have to troubleshoot something or understand something, right, there's a full command line available. So being able to see the status of the agent, is it communicating back to the fog or to Checkpoint's cloud, right? So CP nano-s will give you that status. If you want to start and stop the agent running, you can do -R or -Q for that. And then there are advanced command line values that you can use with debugging. And of course, if you've ever done any sort of debugging, you want to always be careful and do it correctly and make sure it's turned off. So we always recommend that if you're at that point, engage our TAC support, our technical support folks, and they'll be happy to help you. But the links here, we'll share this with everyone here if you want to know where those commands are and some of the other additional commands that you can do. And then from an exception perspective, right, there's one of the nice things is that operationally, most customers don't need a lot of exceptions because of the way that the system learns and the way that we offer fine-tuning suggestions and things like that. But there ultimately always are going to be some exceptions needed within the system. And the good news is that it's very straightforward, it's very easy, and there's 4 main actions, right? There's accept, skip, drop, or suppress log, right? So you might want to use these in certain instances when you're troubleshooting an issue. But some important tips, right? So when you are creating an exception, that event card I referenced earlier, right? You want to go in there, open that event card, take a look at the URI path, the HTTP method, the parameter location, right? And all of the detail that's there, and leverage that information when creating the exception. Always add a comment, right? If in case you're using regex, make sure it's right, and then keep it simple. And then ultimately, once you've done and created the exception, make sure you enforce that policy and then that you test it, right? Make sure it works the way that you expect it. So here's an example of some typical problems, right? So say you want to block access from a particular IP address, right? You can select the action of drop, specify the source IP, in this case, 1234 or whatever, right? And then give it that comment, and then you can stop traffic, right, from those particular addresses. And then if you want to get a little bit more granular, right? If you want to block access from a particular subtree, right? So you can specify the condition being a URI with that particular subtree, and then those particular source IPs, right? So just to show you kind of that flexibility. And then finally, in this, you can skip, right? This is a skip action based on, you'll see a matched sample here on the right-hand side. This is coming from that card again, from the logs within the Infinity portal. And you can specify the location, right? The name, the value, and ultimately skip inspecting any, smart TV type traffic in this case, being the user agent. And then last, this comes up a lot, I wanted to at least include this, is if you want to block specific countries, right? So in here, you can go and you can select drop, specify the country code or the country name, based on the standard, and that's how you would, stop that traffic. And then finally, right, in the spirit of community, we open sourced the WAF, I think a year or two ago. It's called openappsec.io. I encourage you guys to go visit there. That community has really pushed the ingress controllers, right, that you see on the bottom. There's been a lot of engagement. It's been really great to see. There's really cool playgrounds out there, a lot of great blog posts. So absolutely check that out. And then finally, if you want to try this, right, go to the Infinity portal, portal.checkpoint.com, right, and you can test the WAF today. And then, CNAPP, right, with prevention. As you can see, it's comprised of 8 modules and 52 engines. We've only talked about web application firewall today, but Checkpoint has a lot of cloud security expertise, and there's a lot of different ways we can layer in these technologies to help secure your environments. And then ultimately, blueprints, right? So we're ultimately creating and updating and doing a lot with blueprints. And where this is very helpful is, say you don't know exactly what you need or where you need it. We are here to help, right, with that conversation. The team that I'm on, there's a whole slew of us around the globe. We're here to kind of guide you and work with you to kind of best architect the solution that will be the most secure and most affordable and so on, right? And so that is what we're here to do. And so again, stop chasing those cloud risks, right? Start preventing them. Use our AI-powered cloud security technology. And I really appreciate your time today. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to reach out. So back to you, Rob. Thanks.
No, great stuff, Brian. Thank you. Have some quick questions for you here. You actually answered most of them during your prezo. Since we're a little over, I'll skip those. But you just did geo-blocking, so you answered that one. Yes, we will provide the links to the Clarity Team 82 and the WAF comparison project on GitHub. Question, what about on-prem web servers? Can you protect those too? I know you're just talking CloudGuard here.
Yep, absolutely. So private cloud, public cloud, wherever your app lives today, we can deploy and protect all of it.
Okay. And just to be clear, API visibility is part of the WAF product, or is it another product?
It is part of it. Yep.
Right. And this last one here, and anybody else you have questions, please type them in. I'll get to those too. But last one I got here is just a question on alerting. Priority levels, alerting. If you want to know if something really bad is going on, can you control that?
Yep, absolutely. There are ways to get the logs and put them into the system that you're using, for operational alerts. So yes, you can absolutely get the alerts. And I didn't even actually show much of the console, but here's a look. Right, there's a full featured monitoring capabilities in the WAF.
Right, absolutely. All right, I think that covers it, Brian. Let me just look one more time. Yep, I think we're good. So thank you again. We will include, like Brian said, a lot of those links for anything you have. If you have any further questions, you could reach out to myself, Brian, or your account team. Like Brian said, we have specialists and architects around the globe, so we have a lot of resources for you. Everybody's environment is unique, right, Brian? So it's not a one-size-fits-all type of solution, right?
No, cloud is very unique. Yeah, everybody's cloud is unique to them.
Right. So make sure, plan properly, talk to the experts, people like Brian, and we'll make sure we get you secure. But okay, thank you, Brian, again. We'll send up that follow-up email with any reference content in the recording link of this session. Our next webinar will be in 2 weeks. You'll see an invitation for that soon. But thanks again for joining, and we'll see you here next time. Enjoy your day. Thanks, Brian.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Well.